Alright. Just gonna chill out here until people arrive. Alright, looks like we got some people. Sound off in the chat if you can hear me. Just make sure everything is good. Hello, Gandalf Harrison Wells. Hey everybody, how's it going? Alright, awesome. So today is just going to be kind of a chill live stream. We're going to do some updates. You guys can ask me any questions you want, whether it's about the channel, about nonverbal communication reading, about some of the videos that I've done recently, about deduction, whatever you really want, you can ask a question. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, it's been a long day so far, and just streaming right now, and we're gonna end at 3:30 my time, so that'll be an hour, and then I gotta go to class. So yeah, just trying to fit this into my schedule because I have been trying to live stream since last weekend, and every time something came up, so I was like, okay, gotta fit it into the schedule somewhere, somehow. So here we are. All right, got a question. Where do you want to take the channel? Okay, so great jumping off point for what we were talking about. So the channel started off obviously as more like educational type deal. We had a lot of videos about how to read people, how to do nonverbal analysis, how to perform deductions, stuff like that. And then more recently, going into the nonverbal communication reading stuff just exclusively, pretty much. And that's fun. I enjoy doing that. It seems to be something that you guys enjoy watching. And I intend to keep doing that, but I want to push that a little bit further, because nonverbal communication reading is just one of the things that I have learned how to do over the years and things like that. So I want to start incorporating more cold reading, psychological profiling, and stuff like that into my reads that I'm doing. And the educational aspect of the channel has always kind of stayed there. It never really went away, because if you watch my nonverbal analyses, I take a lot of time and care and effort to explain how these tells work, explain this, that, and the other, and sort of using a demonstration as a means of education, and that's going to continue. But I also do want to do some strictly educational stuff. So for instance, I want to kind of put my formal education to a little bit more use and start doing some videos on psychology. One of the first videos on that topic that I want to do is do a video explaining the psychology behind proclivity to believing conspiracy theories. So I have a folder in my satchel of just like 8 papers on the topic that I've been reading through, and I'm thinking of doing a sort of like literature review type deal series of videos. So I don't know if that would be something you guys are interested in. You guys can let me know. I was planning on doing at least one and seeing what the reaction to it is, see if you guys like that, but I think that would be fun. Alright, let's see what we got here. Okay, I've been working on making myself... Okay. Okay, so been working on making myself more smarter with chess and puzzle games. What else can I do to be more observant and deduce? So like logic puzzles and things like that, they're helpful in the senses that they exercise your brain, but they don't really give you a direct transferable skill necessarily to observing people and reading them. So it gives you some like base level mental exercise to do throughout the day, which just keeps you on your toes, keeps you sharp, keeps those gears turning. Um, but if you want to focus more on being able to read people, you got to exercise reading people. So, we got the whole back catalog for training exercises for observation, for deduction, for things like that. And, immersing yourself in the knowledge of researchers on nonverbal communication, reading books, reading papers, understanding psychology, also just asking people, like, when you get to know people, really engage in those sorts of conversations, and you'll start to figure out more how the things that you're seeing lines up with the things that you're hearing. So there's that. How do you stay motivated to deduce when you're down in the dumps? I mean, it can be kind of hit or miss. Like uh, emotional difficulties can just make it difficult to do anything. If you're, when I get depressed or down in the dumps or whatever you want to call it, I just kind of don't want to do anything. I just do the things that I have to do. I get up, I go to work, have a cup of coffee, and I just do what I got to do. I go to class, I come back, I get stuff done, but it's always kind of the bare minimum when you're in that, or at least when I'm in that sort of zone. So what I've gotten into the habit of is like knowing when just more practice is just going to frustrate me and make things more difficult. So I won't ignore things that I see, and if things just start coming to me, I'm looking at somebody and I'm reading them, I won't ignore that, I won't suppress that, but I'm not going to actively push myself more than I need to do, because if I'm in a state where I need to focus on my mental health and, get myself out of a rut that I'm in or something like that, I got to focus inwards, not necessarily outwards. So that's kind of how that works for me, at least. And obviously still learning as I go, because that's all life is. How am I doing today? I'm doing pretty okay. I'm doing pretty well. Today's been a fairly productive day. Just been kind of busy running errands, figuring out taxes, things like that, adult things. um, I always end up getting confused between deduction, induction, and abduction in real life. Okay. Academically, it matters. In practice, it doesn't matter if you necessarily can distinguish between deductive, inductive, and abductive reasoning in a logical thought process that you're currently having. That's just not super important. It can be helpful to really understand the nuances of the distinctions between those three forms of reasoning in order to figure out where your reasoning might be flawed or something like that. But if you know how to use each form of reasoning and you're applying them correctly to the observable set of data that you have, then you'll be fine if you can't just name off specifically that this logical thought is abductive, or this logical thought is inductive, and this one is deductive. It just, because they all work in synergy when you're using them together in an organic way, which when you're observing people and trying to read them, you're using oftentimes all three, just in different spaces. And sometimes it can go kind of linear, where you make your observations and then use deductive reasoning to interpret those observations, and then you use inductive reasoning to sort of create some hypotheses surrounding those observations, and then use abductive reasoning to eliminate the less than likely hypotheses and focus on the alternatives that line up with the most data. So sometimes it goes linearly like that, but oftentimes like life is not clean and neat like that. So it really doesn't matter as long as you know how to use those forms of reasoning. As long as your logical faculties are sound, then you'll be fine. I use puzzles as a meditative activity. Do you think this helps my mental state whenever I'm lost? I mean, yeah, I like to start off my day with some puzzles. Like, you guys probably have played Flow Free. It's a puzzle game where you have these dots and you got to draw the lines. You got to fill up the whole grid. Very simple visual puzzle. I mean, they can get pretty complicated and very difficult to solve. But, starting my day off solving a few of those just helps center me. If that's how your brain works, then that's great. I got to bring this up. That hair is amazing. Love the whole look. Thank you. Thank you so much. I have been curating this look for a very long time. I don't train deduction daily. I just try to figure out when I pick up some signs. That's fine. If it improves your life a little bit, you don't have to go crazy with it. However much you want to put into it is however much you're going to get out of it. And if what you're getting out of it is exactly as much as you need or want, then that's perfectly fine. You don't have to be the world's greatest deductionist to benefit from the practice. You can understanding some nonverbal tells, understanding some aspects of cold reading and things like that. That's it can improve your life even if you aren't necessarily obsessed with it. You know what I mean? It's also just a matter of recognizing how much knowledge you have, how much effort you've put into it before, and then from there kind of figuring out how much confidence you should put in your claims. Because if you've only learned a little bit, you can be susceptible to the Dunning-Kruger effect and then think that you're an expert when you're really not, and then that can lead to you just throwing out a bunch of claims and just not landing any of them. So that can always be a tricky situation to manage, because the more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know much. So it's just a matter of being realistic with your own abilities and having the proper expectations surrounding those. And that just comes with experience. Hi from France. Hello from the good old US of A. I have always wanted to move to France. Just wanted to throw that out there. That is one of the goals in life, is to get to France. What's my Q? Last time it was measured, it was somewhere in like the 140 range. IQ can vary within give or take 5 points depending on your mood. So if you really, really push effort into doing an IQ test and you're in an exceptionally good mood, you could score 5 points higher. If you don't really care and you're not really in a great mood, maybe you didn't sleep well, maybe this, that, or the other, you'll probably score 5 points lower. So there's a range of 10 points. So yeah. Let's see here. Have you learned to apply this philosophy in your life in general, or do you find room for it as much as you can? What would your advice be on that? Are you like asking in regards to the philosophy, like my personal philosophy surrounding this skill set? Because that is a whole conversation in and of itself, of like, what do I think this means? When do I think you should use it? This, that, and the other. There's a lot to unpack in something like that. As far as do I apply it to my life, I think my life has centered around it because this has become my obsession. And even when I'm not actively doing it, the philosophy that I have crafted around it does impact how I interact with people. Always enjoy your channel. Has anyone ever said you've got a Ferris Bueller thing going on? Nope, never gotten that one. First time for everything. What do I think about Jordan Peterson? Oh, God. So, okay. There's two Jordan Petersons in my mind. There's Jordan Peterson, the psychology professor, and there's Jordan Peterson, the public figure, let's say. As a psychologist, and I appreciate his academic work. Like, before I really got started looking into his more the public figure aspect of him, like when I was taking my gap year and deciding whether I wanted to do chemistry in university or psychology, I started watching his lectures and I found them super, super interesting. And they did prepare me well for a lot of the classes that I have taken in university. So, on the psychological aspect of things and like his knowledge and things, I'm not going to shit on that. Like, there are some things that I think the literature may or may not agree with him. But I mean, I don't even have a bachelor's yet, and he has a PhD, so I'm not going to call him out really hard on that element of things. Now, when it comes to politics and the public figure element of things, I think he has tried to approach that from a decent place. I think becoming a public figure changes a lot of aspects of how you interact with the public sphere. And I think he just sort of became a caricature of himself after a while. But as far as like politically, do I agree with him on a lot of things? No. I mean, I'm a socialist. I'm a leftist. Like, I can appreciate the way that he puts forth his arguments, but I don't agree with many of them. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect, not the Daniel-Kruger effect. So, as I understand that one, that is a social psychology principle, I believe, where when you first get introduced to a topic and you first start learning about it, you think that the scope of the knowledge regarding that field is much smaller than it actually is, so you feel like you know more proportionally about the whatever topic it is. Like, for instance, if you start learning how to play instrument, and like at first you know nothing, then like let's say a few weeks you start playing this guitar and you learn some things, maybe you learn a very simple song, and then you think, okay, I've pretty much got it at this point. It's just kind of like the same from here on out. And then you start learning more, and then you realize that these basic principles that you learn, they don't really fit. They don't really like apply to everything. There's so much more that is at play in something like that. So essentially, it's sort of a thing where a little bit of knowledge is almost worse than no knowledge. Because with no knowledge, you recognize, I don't know that. With a little bit of knowledge, you think you know way more than you do, and the more you learn, the more you realize that there is more to learn that you haven't learned. Because then your view of how much information is in the actual topic broadens. So while your knowledge, like the things you actually know about the topic, will broaden, but on top of that, the like what you can see that you haven't yet learned also broadens. So a little bit of knowledge can be more dangerous than no knowledge at all if you aren't familiar with that sort of tendency of humans to do. Any books / articles in regards to deduction? There's some books, the monographs by Ben Cardall, Maria Konikova's Mastermind, How to Think Like Sherlock Holmes. Those are really good reads. As far as actual academic literature, there's not really a lot. You're going to find a lot of academic literature in regards to nonverbal communication, but not in terms of deduction, because that's not really an academic field. There is no standardization, there is no actual scientific field of study dedicated to that. I mean, it's kind of a hodgepodge of a bunch of things. You've got the psychological cold reading, you've got some nonverbal analysis, you've got you've got critical thinking, which is going to fall more into philosophy, in the use of logic, because when we're talking about deductive, inductive, and abductive reasoning, those forms of logic, they're intended more so for logical argumentation, so more so the field of philosophy where you're laying out a structured argument rather than just like thinking in your head, type of deal. That's why there's a standardization of those forms of reasoning. So there's so many different academic elements that play into deduction, and it's more of an application than anything else of all these different fields and principles within these fields and things of that nature. What field of study is the art of deduction based on? Well, okay, I don't know if you commented that before I had my little spiel about that. It's everything from social sciences to physical sciences and philosophy. Like that, it's just, you got the critical thinking elements that are like the base of all academics, and then you've got observation, which is more of a skill than any sort of field of study. And then you've got just the scientific method itself, that you're applying to the things that you see, logical principles from philosophy, and then you add in things that from different physical sciences, like knowledge of chemistry, knowledge of physics, knowledge of this, that, and the other, and then knowledge of like from the behavioral sciences, so social psychology, anthropology, even sociology to a degree. You just, the more knowledge you have about a more diverse field of things, the better you are at interpreting more situations. Now, there's a catch-22 here. So, like, someone with a PhD is going to be really, really, really knowledgeable about a very narrow domain. So, they can tell you every single thing about that one thing, but their knowledge is not broad. So when asked that question, they can answer it very, very thoroughly. Whereas if you're more of a jack of all trades and not necessarily a master of anything, then you'll have fairly decent answers to a broad range of questions. But none of those answers are going to be very thorough. So you couldn't consider yourself an expert in any of these things, but you know enough to functionally work your way around a bunch of different things. So that's kind of what deduction is all about. Did you like season 4 of Sherlock? I did. I know that's a bit of a controversial opinion. I think, as a season of television, it was fine. It gets like a clap and a half. It's fine. It's done pretty well. It's shot really well. Acted very well. They completed the character arcs and the things that they set up. As a Sherlock Holmes adaptation, there are some issues there, but, the writers had already done a fairly decent, really good adaptation of those stories and those characters in the previous seasons, and they just wanted to wrap up the way that they were wanting to tell the story. So from a storytelling perspective, I'm perfectly fine with that, but it's not necessarily good Sherlock Holmes, it's just good storytelling. You know what I mean? How do I speak so smart? Your guess is as good as mine, dude. I'm practicing microexpression, spotting, and body language reading. What would you recommend to watch? Would you recommend to watch poker games for that? Sure. If you like any sort of thing that you can watch where there is some sort of deception and concealed emotion, you might be able to apply microexpression reading to that, and certainly just nonverbal analysis in general. So sure, yeah, no, that'll be certainly a challenge. That's like hard mode, um, especially if you're watching televised poker where you've got some of the best players in the world, which means some of the best liars in the world. And don't get mad at yourself if you don't spot things, because not all lies fail. That's just the truth of the matter. Sometimes there are no leaks, which is kind of what I stress in my nonverbal analyses. Because one of the things that's really frustrating about doing nonverbal analyses, as I'm doing now on YouTube, is that I'm looking at retroactive data for the most part. There's an interview. I'm watching this interview, and I am writing my notes and doing a read of this person. I am simply an observer. I am not involved in the interview process itself. And when you're doing nonverbal reading, being involved in the interview process is super, super important, because you'll notice something, and then that'll prompt you to form a hypothesis and then create a question as a test to that hypothesis. So you then ask a different question that still focuses on the thing that you saw a tell in regards to, and then you continue pressing that and see more and more leakage potentially. And so, or you don't, and your hypothesis maybe, you seek to disprove the hypothesis, right? And that's what you do in a nonverbal read. And so the interviewing aspect of that, actually asking the questions, that is super, super helpful and super, super important. So one of the things that's very frustrating about the reads that I do for the channel is that it's just really hard to be certain about anything. And I've gotten a lot of, compliments in, bravos for being so nuanced in my perspectives and things like that. And really all it comes down to is just the fact that it could go either way, and I would love to ask the questions that could help clear that up, but I'm not able to. and so, that's never going to be sensational. True nonverbal reading is not going to be super sensational. You can jazz it up a little bit and still be, scientifically accurate and intellectually honest. You can certainly jazz it up, but it's not going to be, like if you see a title to a video that's like, body language proves this, that, or the other, it's like, no, it doesn't. Body language can't prove anything. It's simply another piece of information that you can use in drawing forth a conclusion. And just proving things is really loaded term that I don't like, which it's just, just as a frustration of mine that I have with just the general understanding or misunderstanding of how science works amongst people, that science does not seek to prove, it seeks to disprove. When you conduct an experiment based off a hypothesis, you are attempting to disprove the hypothesis. If you fail to disprove it, then it makes that hypothesis more likely than not to be true. And then you keep doing tests to try and disprove the hypothesis. And then if, 10 different labs do the same experiment in the same way, and they all fail to disprove the hypothesis, then the hypothesis is most likely true, but you'll never know for sure, because that's just not how the universe works. The only way to know anything for sure is to know everything, and that's just not possible. So, sensationalized nonverbal reads, that just doesn't, I'm not a fan of that, but I understand why it works very, very well for those people who do them in terms of financially speaking, and growing their brand, growing their audience, because people see the nonverbal element of things and they're like, oh, you can prove if someone's lying. It's like, No, kind of, maybe, sort of. It's more complicated than that. But there's this sort of like superpower element to it that makes it super sensational if you spin it the right way. And maybe your read is done very, very well, but just the way you frame it can be, sensational. But it's kind of hard to come up with a title like Body Language Proves That Olivia Jade Felt Like Shit. And then go into and have an hour-long video being like, well, given this, that, and the other, she might feel like shit. Maybe she doesn't. She could also just be really good at lying. And you can't really commit to a title like that without committing to it in the video, because then when people who are just wanting, sensationalism click on, they'll just realize that that's not what's happening and they'll click off. So, I don't even fuck around with that. More videos, please. Followed by, what is that? 6 angry emojis. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry. So sorry. I'm trying. I'm trying to make more videos. I Your needs will be sated. Please just like, share, comment, subscribe, all the things. Please feed the algorithm and feed my bank account so I can dedicate more time to this. Please. Thank you. Okay, shameless plugs out of the way. Okay. Anything about the phenomenology of body language, of body memory, implicit and explicit memory. So I'm actually taking a memory and cognition class currently. That would actually be a really good topic for a video. I'm not gonna, because my understanding of this so far is still needs some work. So I'm going to decline answering that question until I'm more thoroughly informed on the topic. Hey Jordan, do you watch anime? Sometimes, not often anymore. You know, I never really had like an anime phase. Just, there were some anime that I would watch on top of the other things that I would watch. Just sometimes it's a good story, or sometimes I really appreciate the art style, or, whatever. But I never really had that phase. So. Yeah, it lost my place. This is fantastic. Okay, where were we? Are you afraid of insane technological advancement? I'm not. Here's the thing. I'm not a techno-optimist by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm not afraid of it, per se. A lot of the times when people ask, are you afraid of technological advancement? A lot of the times that conversation very, very quickly jumps straight to AI apocalypse. I'm not super concerned about that. So I work at an AI research institute. I work in multimedia. Like, I just take pretty pictures and do podcast edits and stuff like that. But, I do know people who are in that field. There's not really a fear amongst those people that that's going to happen. And, like, you could say that, well, they're just biased. It's like, of course. I think that as far as society is concerned, AI could be a problem, not in the sense that sentient AI is going to be a problem, but how humans use AI is going to be a problem. Replacing human-centered labor with AI is a bad idea. Like, there's an AI, I think, that can paint original paintings in the style of Rembrandt. Burn it. Just fucking get rid of it. I don't want that. That's artistic expression is a human endeavor. Why do we need to outsource that to an AI? We don't. We just did it because we could. And that's not a good thing, right? Now, I'm not worried that AI is going to become sentient and then want to take over the world. Like, that's not a huge concern of mine, because so we have recreated the process of evolution in regards to our AI, right? So the way that we create, AI algorithms now is through the process of natural selection. And so they're evolving, and we don't even know how the most advanced ones work anymore because the nodes are not algorithmic. It's like the brain almost, because there's so many interconnecting things that we don't understand because we're randomizing the process of creating it, and we're keeping the ones that work and throwing away the ones that don't. So eventually, yeah, given selection, we could get sentience through that. However, these AI apocalypse stories, they are always predicated on the AI wants to kill humanity to have the earth to themselves. That's very unlikely to happen because that's a human-centered fear. We're worried that humans will do that. And the reason for that is because we evolved here, and so our evolutionary pressures dictate our desires, which revolve around the resources on this planet, right? Because that's where we evolved. Whereas they're evolving in a completely different space, a completely different plane of existence, if you will. It is completely digital. So we don't even know what a sentient AI would necessarily want or desire. And robotics technology is not going to get to the point where we're going to put these sentient AIs in robot bodies. Like, humanoid robots specifically are designed to be operated by humans. So, humanoid robots are there as a surrogate for a human, where a human would it would just be very, very dangerous for a human to go. Like, if you need to clean up nuclear fallout in a broken reactor, you all these things that are inside that structure are designed for humans to operate. But you can't send a human in there because they'll just die. So you send in a robot with the same features as a human that can do all the same things. It can open doors the same way. It can get into vehicles the same way. That's the point of a humanoid robot. But putting a sentient AI in that doesn't make any sense. So the AI that are closest to getting sentient are the ones that just they're picking out keywords and phrases and determining what YouTube video you should watch and things like that. Like, that's where a lot of the more thinky brain stuff is happening with AI. And so if evolution operates the same way for AI that it does for us, which so far it seems to be, if they become sentient, they'll simply want to just be better at acquiring the resources that they care about, which will be the resources that we gave them a selective pressure to pursue. So I'm not really worried about an AI apocalypse, and I'm not really afraid of extreme technological advancement. I think that we need to take a step back sometimes and just figure out how the fuck we're gonna deal with certain things, but I'm not worried, if that makes sense, as far as technology itself being bad. I'm worried about people being bad with technology, and but there's already so many problems to deal with in terms of people. Have you done Paul Ekman's Microexpression training? If so, would you recommend it? I am planning to do it. So that is a matter of time and finances for me. But over the summer, I think I'm going to be able to save up enough money and have enough free time to do that. But given what I know of Paul Ekman and his work, I would recommend it. And I lost my place again. What do you think of Joe Navarro? Okay, Joe Navarro, super interesting guy. I love his books. I think he is one of the best in the game in terms of nonverbal communication reading. I really do. He's very honest. He's very forthright. He's very, he lays his cards on the table and explains to you exactly the limitations of the things that nonverbal communication reading can do. And he's very involved in, like, you know, creating opportunities for people to be more educated on that. And I think that the way that he goes about that is very, very good. I have no complaints, you know. I'm certainly not knowledgeable enough on nonverbal communication to call him out on anything he might be wrong about in terms of the actual information he puts out. So, you know, I trust him on the level of the way that he explains the pitfalls before the application. That's the way that you want to do it. You know, that is intellectually honest. Uh, have I deduced when the Third World War is coming? No. By my estimates, hopefully never. But that's just a hope. That's, uh, do I think having autism makes deduction harder? Well, I am a high-functioning autistic person, so I can tell you from personal experience, yeah, it does make some things harder. It's kind of ironic that this has become my passion and obsession because it is, you know, social awareness and emotional illiteracy and things like that. Like, that's stuff I've had to deal with my entire life. So it's just kind of ironic that I picked learning how people work as the thing that I wanted to get really, really good at when that was the thing that I was, you know, you could say almost the poorest suited for. But, you know, I've always had a philosophy of, you know, it doesn't matter where you start at, it matters how much work you put into it. And, you know, I have not come across something that I cannot overcome so far. It does make it more difficult, especially if where you fall on the spectrum affects more and more of your social skills, but you can use that to your advantage, like I did, where you recognize that you don't have an intuitive knowledge of these things, but you can use your ability to break things down and think about things and understand things in a completely different way. That's why, like, learning about the science of nonverbal communication was so helpful to me, was because I didn't have an intuitive understanding of it. So I didn't have any bad habits regarding it. And then I learned all the good information and all the good habits. And then as you practice it more, it becomes intuitive for you because you're still just doing a workaround. But it gets to the point where it doesn't matter anymore. So learning how to use your weaknesses as a strength, that's something that, you know, my entire life is built on. Uh, Atheist, agnostic, theist. Um, some days I wake up as any one of those three. It's more because, so all I think of atheism and agnosticism as the same thing, because all atheism is agnostic, because it is not the claim that there is no God. It is simply a statement that you do not. It is a lack of belief in a God, not a belief that there is no God. So it is agnostic. It is simply, I don't have enough knowledge to make a claim, because it is an extraordinary claim and there's not extraordinary evidence to support that. So you just say, I don't know. And you act as though there is none because, you know, there's not a sufficient reason to believe that there's one. So the way that I think of it is like atheist, deist, or theist. So do you just don't know, don't care? Do you think that there is a observer, creator God that just does not intervene? That would be a deist, and then a theist would be someone who believes in an interventionist God. So I could be any one of those three on any given days. Usually more on this side of the spectrum than that side of the spectrum. This side of the spectrum is a bad day. But anyway. I was always curious, are you studying something? I am a psychology major with an anthropology minor. I'm about to finish up this semester, and then I will be going into my senior year. And so in summer 2022, I will have a bachelor's in psychology. Okay. So I think I'm going to take a break from questions real quick because I have a question for you guys. So now that there are more of you here, I'm going to ask the question that I asked at the start of all this. Do you guys want to see me incorporate more deduction and cold reading and psychological profiling into my nonverbal reads? So do you want a full comprehensive read, or do you just want it to stay a nonverbal read? And I did a poll on that, and like the overwhelming majority of you seem to want the comprehensive read. Just voice your opinions on that. Okay, second question. How would you feel about educational videos coming back centered around psychology? So I want to do, for instance, a video on the psychology of conspiracy theories, and maybe do behaviorism 101, or social psychology, like explaining social psychology principles, stuff like that. Just putting my educational background to good use. Would you be interested in that? The second question. Okay, now third question is, when it comes to nonverbal reads, would you also be interested in seeing reads of fictional characters and a breakdown of performances based off of nonverbal communication? Would that be of any interest to you guys whatsoever? Because it's something that I've thought about doing, and it's something that I've seen that other people have done. It seems like fun, and coming from a background of film and performance, it's also just fun. I love to see a good performance, and when I watch shows and I see a good performance, I do think about the nonverbal communication and the body language and all this stuff. So, what are your thoughts? The 3 questions, I need 3 answers from each of you. Go. Okay. Full read if possible. Okay, yes. Okay, so I think that's a yes to the educational videos. Okay, what do I want? I want to do all of them. All right, I want to do all of this, but I also don't want to make a video, get 3 views on it, and cry. That's what I don't want, because I've been stuck at like 1,000 to 2,000 views per video in the first week for years now, and while the subscriber count has grown, the view count has not, and the view numbers mean money numbers, which mean I can eat more food. So I would like to see the view numbers go up, and I would like to know that the videos that I'm planning on making would actually perform a little bit better, because if I were able to do YouTube for my full-time job, that would help immensely for future plans that I have. I don't care about getting rich off of this. I just want to be sustainable off of it, if that makes sense. So I do value your opinion in the sense that I want to see what's more likely to perform well. So I'm being completely upfront and honest about that. Okay. Question 1, comprehensive. Question 2, yes, please. Question 3, maybe you analyze controversial fictional personalities. Okay, define controversial fictional personalities. Okay, highly interested in the second one. Okay, word. Uh, okay. Okay, it seems to be consensus. All three sound good. Um, okay. Yeah, we got a question again. I love the way Jordan B. Peterson breaks down animated movies in Jungian psychology. Do you have any opinion on Jungian psychology? I think so. Jung's a bit of a mixed bag. As far as his personality theory, not scientific. As far as some of his other stuff, hugely influential. Uh, it's hard to square Jung's theories with current understanding of psychology, but it is easier to fit Jung's theories more into an understanding of anthropology. Um, so in the psychology aspect of things, I feel like Jung corrected Freud on everything that he got wrong. That's how I view it. That being said, Jung is definitely not gospel by any stretch of the imagination, especially with his personality theory. It was based off of his own personal experience, just like Freud's was. So, Jungian psychoanalysis works really, really well for people who have similar lives to Jung, just like Freudian psychoanalysis works really, really well for people who had lives similar to Freud. So Jung is interesting. I love learning about Jung's theories. I think the concepts, I think his expansion of Freud's concept of personality, of the id, the ego, and the superego, adding in the persona and the shadow, I think that makes it a far more useful tool of consolidating information. I don't think it's scientific per se, but I think it is a really useful conceptualization that can help you consolidate psychological principles that have been derived scientifically. So those terms can be that schema can be very useful even if it isn't scientific per se. So yeah, I don't really have anything bad to say about Jung. I think he was very intelligent, very influential, and I think the field of psychology is better for his influence. But I'm not going if I'm writing a paper, I'm not going to be citing him. Let's just put it that way. Okay, so do reads of villains from movies? Villains usually are the most interesting characters. Well, okay. Uh, Start a Patreon. I have a Patreon. It's in the description of every video, man. I appreciate the advice, but I have one. Do you guys not know about that? Do I not plug it enough? I really don't. I'm really bad at plugging things. Am I interested in other fields of science? I love chemistry. I almost majored in chemistry. I haven't studied chemistry since high school, so I'm not exactly knowledgeable about it, but I remember loving it. Um, yeah, I like to be interested in as many different fields of science as I possibly can. Um, because the more that I know, the better off that I am. But I also recognize that when it comes to those fields, I am a layman and I need to listen to the experts. Um, if a video's title is "We were paid to go into a serial killer's house, not all of us make it out alive," and quote the serial killer's house, which one do you think are more likely to click? Okay, yeah, I get, I'm horrible with titles, but I understand what you're getting at there. So title creation is something that I really need to focus on, and I have been trying to research that more and more, and there's some good channels that I found to research optimization and stuff like that. It's also just finding the time for this stuff. If I did start a Patreon, why does view count matter? Don't you have a few followers who would support you through the good times and the bad on your Patreon? Um, Given that I got $3 from Patreon last month, view count still matters. I'd like to see reads teaching skills to autistic viewers, reading emotions, body language, and social norms. Yeah, see, honestly, one of the reasons I started this channel is because this is something that would have helped me a lot back in the day. So one of the reasons that I have put so much work into educating is because I wanted to make something that would have helped me, you know. What is the most useful thing that you've learned? Also make porn for money. You guys want me to start an OnlyFans? That sounds like a disaster waiting to happen. But yeah, if the people demand it. Um, So what is the most useful thing that I've learned? That I am stupid. That's a very useful thing to know. Is that you can be tremendously stupid in any given situation. Just I I am always wrong about something. Anything that comes out of my mouth. I may be 99% correct, and then there's one thing that I got wrong. 1%, you know. But I always, like, that has been the most useful thing that I've learned, and that is something that I've really, really learned recently. Um, just, I am always wrong about something. Just be confident in what you know, but also be realistic that you might be stupid in a given situation, which is especially true for me. What's up, Joshua? Joshua S. Um, Jordan OnlyFans. Word. We'll see how that goes. To get more views, I would suggest working on the clickbait component. I'm really trying not to go full-on clickbaity because, like, as I said, nonverbal reads are very, very dry, and I don't want to sensationalize them. But I should work on just making them more clickable. Depends on what you have. Take your shirt off. Let's check. I like to leave things to the imagination. What's your mindset about life before this YouTube thing and now afterwards? Well, I mean, that's really hard to just, like, pin on YouTube because I started the channel when I was 14 and I'm 21 now. So that was just a very important, human growth period in general as far as my philosophy on life. I can tell you when I started the channel, I was even stupider than I am now. But that's to be expected. You would hope for some sort of upward trajectory. But yeah, I can't really say that YouTube has really changed anything in my overarching philosophy of life. I think just more of the things that I have done in general, growing the fuck up has done that. Also, we're going to close out the stream in about 5 minutes, so if you've got any quick questions, now is the time. We're going to do quick fire answers. All right. What have I been keeping myself busy with recently? Work, studying, maintaining a social life. Thoughts on nihilism? Um, in practice, needs a little bit of work. And as a philosophy, as far as like its arguments, it's fine. I consider myself a tragic optimist. The world is shit, and but you can make the best out of it, which is sort of derived from nihilism a little bit, sort of kind of similar to optimistic nihilism. If life has no meaning, you get to make the meaning out of life, So, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily a bad philosophy. It's just how you apply it. I liked the sketches. Yeah, I should bring back the sketches. I should. Do you have a Discord server? If not, ever think of making one? I have one. I'm not very involved in it. I have a lovely team of people who run it for me, and it has just kind of become its own thing. But I don't have the time to really make it about this whole channel thing. I'm really bad at stuff like that. Like I don't even have Twitter on my phone. I'm barely on Instagram. I'm just really bad at all that sort of stuff. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no? You bastard, you already know this. Don't start shit like that right now. Don't do it. Don't put pineapple on pizza. The Italian is telling you. Okay. Social life, there's a pandemic. Getting the vaccination. Also, the two friends that I have are already vaccinated, so. Why have you chosen the Superman style hair as your personal brand? It's just the best way to style my hair that I have found at the moment. Okay. What about live streams, reading pictures and videos? The audience would really be invested. I mean, I would be. I've thought about it. I used to do live reads, but it's a little bit more difficult to set up than you would think. Do I think American pizza is disgusting? No, American pizza is fine. Yeah, just good pizza is good pizza. I just don't think pineapple works on pizza. What? Just sounds like I'm a pizza elitist. Okay. First of all, yes. And that is where we're ending the stream. Pineapple does not go on pizza. Change my mind. This is the hill I've chosen to die on. They say all press is good press, so start the controversy of Jordan doesn't like pineapple on pizza. That's how we'll grow the channel. That is how. Just retweet that. Jordan is a piece of shit for not liking pineapple on pizza. Jordan's a pizza elitist. That's how we win. Traditional Italian pizza is fantastic as well. Don't get me wrong. Like the different styles of pizza can be good in of themselves. I just don't like that one particular topping. It just doesn't go. Anyway, yes, I do have to get off to class now. So this is the end of the stream. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Thank you for all of your wonderful questions and all of the wonderful feedback on my questions for you. Now, your job is to tweet about my pizza preferences and tag me at Deductionist. All the social media stuff is in the description of every video. So, anyway. right. Ciao, everybody.